Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the human transport ship, watching the stars blur past. His hands rested calmly at his sides, but his mind was racing. In 3 hours he would arrive at the Vexari homeworld. In 6 hours he would marry a queen he had never met. The mission briefing had been simple. The Galactic Coalition needed humanity's alliance with the Vexari Empire to be stronger, much stronger. A threat called the Void Swarm was destroying entire star systems, and every civilization needed to work together to survive. The Vexari controlled the most powerful military in known space. Without them, humanity would be left defenseless. Ambassador Lisa Grant had explained it all to Jake 3 weeks ago. She sat across from him in a quiet office on Earth, her face tired and worried. "We need someone to volunteer for this marriage," she said. "Someone who understands what's at stake. Someone who can put humanity first, even if it means sacrificing their own future." Jake had nodded slowly. "What do we know about her?" "About Queen Zelovara? She's young for a Vexari ruler. Only 30 cycles, which is like mid-20s for us. She's brilliant, tactical, and completely dedicated to her empire. The Vexari respect strength above all else. They think we're weak, Jake, fragile. We only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. They've had it for thousands. And she agreed to marry a human?" Lisa had smiled sadly. "She agreed to a political arrangement. The coalition pressured her. She needs to show unity against the Void Swarm. But don't expect warmth, Jake. Don't expect love. You'll be a symbol, nothing more." Now, as Jake watched the transport approach the massive crystalline structure orbiting the Vexari capital world, he wondered what kind of life awaited him. The Imperial Palace was enormous, catching the light of 3 suns and scattering it in rainbow patterns across space. The docking was smooth. Jake was met by a group of Vexari officials who barely looked at him. They were tall, nearly 7 feet each, with pale blue skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. Their eyes were large and dark, set in elegant faces that showed little emotion. "Follow," one of them said in heavily accented English. "Queen expects you." Jake followed them through corridors that seemed carved from solid crystal. Everything about the palace spoke of power and ancient history. Humans had been building cities when the Vexari were already conquering star systems. He was taken to a preparation chamber where servants dressed him in formal robes. The clothing felt strange on his body, too light and flowing. Jake caught his reflection in a polished wall. He looked small and plain compared to the towering Vexari around him. His brown hair and average height seemed almost childlike next to them. The wedding ceremony was held in the Grand Hall, a space so vast that Jake could barely see the ceiling. Thousands of Vexari nobility filled the chamber, along with representatives from dozens of other species. Jake recognized a few humans in the crowd, including Ambassador Grant, who gave him an encouraging nod. Then Queen Zelovara entered, and the entire hall fell silent. She was breathtaking. Even among her own beautiful people, she stood out. Her skin held a deeper blue tone, almost purple in certain lights. She wore a gown that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, flowing around her like water. Her face was sharp and intelligent, her eyes missing nothing as she walked toward the ceremonial platform. She barely glanced at Jake as she took her place beside him. The ceremony was conducted in the old Vexari language, which Jake didn't understand. He had been coached on when to nod and when to speak his part. The whole thing felt surreal, like watching someone else's life from a distance. When it was over, they were married. Queen Zelovara turned to face the crowd, Jake standing beside her. She raised one hand and the hall erupted in formal applause. To everyone watching, it looked like a triumph of unity. The reception afterward was harder. Jake stood beside Zelovara as an endless line of dignitaries came to offer congratulations. Most spoke to the queen and ignored him completely. A few gave him pitying looks as if he were some sacrifice being offered up. Commander Krell Oth, the head of the Vexari military, stopped in front of them. He was even larger than most Vexari, with scars crossing his arms and neck. He looked at Jake the way someone might look at an insect. "So this is the human," Kreloth said, speaking to the queen but staring at Jake. "I hope he survives his first week here. Your palace can be dangerous for such fragile creatures." Zelovara's expression didn't change. "Commander, you forget yourself." "Show respect," Kreloth smiled coldly. "Of course, my queen. My apologies to your husband." He said the word like it was a joke. Jake said nothing. He had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. Not yet, anyway. Later that night, Jake was shown to the Queen's private chambers. The rooms were massive, with sweeping views of the planet below. Selovara was already there, standing by the window and looking out at her world. "You may take the room on the left," she said without turning around. "I will take the right. We will maintain separate quarters. This marriage is political, nothing more. Do you understand?" "Yes," Jake said simply. "You will attend councils when I require it. You will present a united image in public. Otherwise, you are free to do as you wish within the palace. Do not embarrass me or humanity. The coalition is watching." "I understand." Selovara finally turned to look at him. Her expression was cold and distant. "Why did you volunteer for this?" Most humans would have refused. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Because someone had to. And because I believe in what we're trying to build, unity, survival, a chance for all of us to make it through what's coming." "The Void Swarm," she said. "Yes. You think marriage to me will save humanity?" "I think it's a start." Selovara studied him carefully. "You are either very brave or very foolish. I have not decided which. Maybe both," Jake said with a slight smile. For the first time, something flickered across the Queen's face. Not quite amusement, but close. "Perhaps. Time will tell." She turned back to the window. "Good night, Jake Morrison." "Good night, Selovara." Jake went to his room and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was too hard, designed for Vexari bodies. Everything here was designed for them, not for him. He was the outsider, the weak human brought in to seal a political deal. But Jake had been an outsider before. He had been underestimated before. He knew how to be patient, how to watch and wait. And he knew that sometimes the most dangerous people were the ones nobody paid attention to. He looked down at his hands. They were calloused and scarred, though he kept the worst scars hidden under his clothes. He had told Ambassador Grant the truth when he volunteered. He believed in unity and survival, but he hadn't told her everything. Jake Morrison had secrets. Secrets about Earth's real history. Secrets about what humans were truly capable of. Secrets about his own past. About the things he had done and the wars he had fought. For now, those secrets would stay buried. For now, he would play the role of the quiet, humble diplomat. He would let them think he was weak and simple. But if the time came when humanity needed him to be something else, something more, Jake would be ready. He had always been ready. Outside his window, the three suns of the Vexari system set below the horizon, and darkness covered the palace. Somewhere out in that darkness, beyond the safety of coalition space, the Void Swarm continued its advance, and Jake Morrison, the nobody diplomat who married a queen, settled in to wait for what came next. 3 weeks passed in the Crystalline Palace, and Jake settled into a strange new routine. He woke early each morning, ate breakfast alone in his room, and then attended whatever meetings or ceremonies Selovara required of him. Most of the time, he simply stood quietly beside her throne, while the Vexari Council discussed matters of state. The council members rarely acknowledged his presence. When they did speak to him, their tone was polite but dismissive, like adults humoring a child. Jake didn't mind. He listened carefully to everything they said, storing away information about Vexari politics, military strength, and the growing threat of the Void Swarm. The news from the outer systems grew worse each day. Another colony had gone silent. Another fleet had been destroyed. The Void Swarm was unlike any enemy the Coalition had ever faced. It consumed everything in its path, growing stronger with each world it devoured. During one council meeting, Jake raised his hand slightly. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at him, surprised that the quiet human had something to say. "Yes?" Selovara asked, her tone neutral. "I was wondering about the swarm's patterns," Jake said. "Has anyone mapped out which systems it attacks first? Is there a logic to its movements?" Commander Kreloth actually laughed. "Logic, it's a mindless plague. It spreads wherever it can." "Everything has patterns," Jake said mildly. "Even things that seem random." "Thank you for your input," one of the council members said in a tone that meant the opposite. "We have our best tactical minds working on this." Jake nodded and said nothing more. But that evening, he requested access to the palace database and spent hours reviewing reports of swarm attacks. He made notes in a small journal he kept, writing in an old Earth shorthand that nobody else would be able to read. There were patterns. He could see them clearly. The swarm was methodical, always choosing the richest targets first, the systems with the most resources. It was learning, adapting. That meant it had some kind of intelligence guiding it. He wanted to tell Zilovara, but she barely spoke to him outside of official duties. They lived in the same chambers but existed in separate worlds. She left early each morning and returned late at night, always focused on her work as queen. One evening, Jake was walking through the palace gardens when he heard voices raised in anger. He followed the sound and found a group of Vexari guards surrounding a smaller alien, one of the insect-like Catherine species. They were pushing the Catherine back and forth between them, laughing. "Please," the Catherine was saying in broken Vexari. "I am ambassador. I have rights here." "You have nothing, Bug," one of the guards said. "Your people contribute nothing to this empire." Jake stepped forward. "That's enough." The guards turned to look at him. The largest one sneered. "The human consort. What are you going to do, little man?" "I'm going to ask you politely to leave the ambassador alone," Jake said calmly. "He's a guest here. And if we don't?" Jake smiled slightly. "Then I'll ask the queen why her guards are creating diplomatic incidents in her own garden." The guards hesitated. They couldn't afford to anger Zilovara, even for the pleasure of mocking a human. With disgusted looks, they walked away. The Catherine ambassador bowed low. "Thank you, honored consort. You are kind." "It's nothing," Jake said. "Are you hurt?" "Only my pride. But I will remember this kindness." The ambassador clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You are not what I expected, human. They say you are weak and simple. But I think you are neither." After the ambassador left, Jake continued his walk. He didn't notice Zilovara watching from a balcony above, her dark eyes thoughtful. The next evening, she surprised him by inviting him to dine with her. Not a formal state dinner, but a private meal in her quarters. Jake accepted, curious about the change. They sat across from each other at a small table. The food was Vexari cuisine, which Jake had learned to tolerate. It was too bland for his taste, but he ate without complaint. "I heard what you did in the garden," Zilovara said. "It was nothing. You stood up to trained warriors for an ambassador from a minor species. Most consorts would have walked away." Jake shrugged. "It was the right thing to do." "The right thing," she repeated. "You speak often of right and wrong, as if the universe cares about such things." "Maybe it doesn't," Jake said. "But we should." Zilovara studied him across the table. "You are strange, Jake Morrison. You never ask for power. You never try to use your position for gain. You simply exist here. Why? I told you before, I believe in what we're building. But what do you want? Every being wants something." Jake was quiet for a moment. "I want to see tomorrow, and the day after that. I want humanity to survive what's coming. If being here married to you helps that happen, then it's enough." "You have scars," Zilovara said suddenly. "I saw them when you were injured during the assassination attempt. 2 weeks earlier, during a state dinner, a radical faction had tried to kill the queen with a concealed plasma weapon. Jake had reacted on instinct, throwing himself between Zilovara and the blast. His shoulder had been badly burned before guards subdued the attacker. Jake had tried to dismiss the injury as minor, but the palace doctors had seen his body while treating him. They had seen the old scars that covered his back and chest. "I've lived an interesting life," Jake said carefully. "Those scars are from weapons, from combat. You told the doctors they were from accidents. They were accidents. I accidentally got in the way of people trying to kill me." Zilovara almost smiled. "Who were you, Jake Morrison? Before you came here?" "A diplomat. Liar." Jake met her eyes steadily. "I've never lied to you, Zilovara, but I've never told you everything either. There's a difference. Tell me now, why?" "Because I need to know if I can trust you. The Void Swarm is coming closer. We may only have months left before it reaches core coalition worlds. I need allies I can rely on." Jake took a breath. "I was a soldier before I was a diplomat. Earth has had a complicated history. We've fought wars, many wars. I served in several of them. Humans fighting each other? Yes, and other things. Earth isn't the peaceful paradise we show the galaxy. We've had to fight to survive, just like everyone else. Maybe more than most." Zilovara leaned forward. "Why hide this? Because the galaxy already thinks we're primitive and violent. We wanted to show that we could be more than that we could choose peace." "But you remember how to fight?" "I do." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Zalovara stood and walked to the window. Commander Kreloth says we should abandon the outer colonies and fortify the core worlds. Let the swarm consume the edges of Coalition space while we build up our defenses. That's a mistake, Jake said. Why? Because the swarm grows stronger with everything it consumes. Every world you abandon makes it more powerful. Eventually, no defense will be strong enough. Then what would you do? Jake joined her at the window. I'd stop running. I'd find a way to hit back. To hurt it so badly that it thinks twice before advancing. Zalovara turned to look at him. In the soft light from the three suns, her face was beautiful and sad. You sound very certain. I've fought enemies that seemed unbeatable before. There's always a way. You just have to be willing to do what others won't. Show me, she said suddenly. Show me what you mean. Over the next hour, Jake sketched out ideas using a datapad. He showed her attack patterns, explained concepts like asymmetric warfare and guerrilla tactics. Things the Vexari had never needed to learn because they always fought with overwhelming force. Zalovara listened carefully, asking sharp questions. Jake could see her brilliant mind working through the concepts, adapting them to fit the current situation. These tactics are ruthless, she said finally. War is ruthless, Mikaum. The Council would never approve such methods. Then, maybe the Council needs to change their thinking. Zalovara smiled for the first time since he'd met her. It was a real smile, not the cold political mask she usually wore. You are full of surprises, Jake Morrison. So are you, Zalovara. That night, as Jake returned to his room, he felt something shift between them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of real partnership. Real trust. He lay in bed thinking about the conversation. He had revealed more than he intended to, but perhaps that was good. The time for pretending was running short. The Void Swarm wouldn't wait for politics and careful diplomacy. Soon, very soon, everyone would learn what humans were truly capable of. Jake touched the scars on his chest, hidden beneath his sleeping clothes. Each one had a story. Each one was a reminder of who he used to be before he became a diplomat. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Not from the Void Swarm, and not from humanity. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that the peaceful days were almost over. The emergency alert woke Jake at dawn. Red lights flashed through the palace, and he could hear running footsteps in the corridors outside. He dressed quickly and found Zalovara already in the main chamber, watching a holographic display with her council. The news was devastating. The Void Swarm had broken through the Coalition's outer defense line. 3 entire fleets had been destroyed in a matter of hours. The swarm was now moving toward the core worlds at frightening speed. How long until they reach Vexari space? Zalovara asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. 6 weeks, maybe less. One of the tactical officers replied. They're moving faster than predicted. Commander Kreloth slammed his fist on the table. We need to evacuate the outer colonies now. Pull everything back to the core worlds and prepare for a siege. And abandon millions of people? Another council member asked. Better to save some than lose all, Kreloth said. Jake stood in the corner, watching and listening. The council argued for an hour, going in circles. No one could agree on a strategy. Fear was taking over, making them reactive instead of proactive. Finally, Jake spoke up. May I say something? The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Zalovara nodded slowly. You're thinking like prey, Jake said. The swarm chases, you run. It attacks, you defend. You're letting it control the fight. And what would you suggest, human? Kreloth asked with barely concealed contempt. That we attack? Our fleets have been destroyed. Not attack. Not yet, but stop running. Start thinking like hunters instead of prey. Explain, Zalovara said. Jake stepped up to the holographic display. Look at the swarm's pattern. It moves from resource-rich systems to other resource-rich systems. It's predictable. That's a weakness. How is predictability a weakness? One of the council members asked. Because if you know where your enemy will be, you can prepare for them. You can set traps. You can choose your battlefield instead of letting them choose it for you. This is basic military theory, Kreloth said dismissively. We already know this. Then why aren't you using it? Jake asked, his voice harder now. Why are you running scared instead of fighting smart? The room went very quiet. No one spoke to Commander Kreloth that way. Zalovara held up a hand before the commander could respond. Continue, Jake. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we stop pretending we know how to fight this thing. Your fleets use standard coalition tactics. Mass formations, overwhelming firepower, direct engagement. The swarm adapts to all of it. You need a different approach, which is the approach my people learned over thousands of years of warfare. Humanity has fought every kind of enemy imaginable. We've learned how to win even when we're outgunned and outnumbered. You're saying humans know better than the coalition military? Kreloth stood up, his face dark with anger. Your species achieved space travel barely 50 years ago. We've been fighting wars across the galaxy for millennia. And yet you're losing, Jake said calmly. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several council members gasped at the insult. But Jake didn't back down. He stared at Kreloth without fear. Zelovara stepped between them. Everyone leave now except Jake and Commander Kreloth. The council filed out reluctantly. When the doors closed, Zelovara turned to Jake. You need to explain yourself immediately. Who are you really? Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment he'd been preparing for. The moment when all the careful pretending would end. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 33 years old. I was born on Earth in the city of New York. I joined the military when I was 18. By the time I was 25, I was a commander in the Sol Defense Force's Ghost Division. Ghost Division? Zelovara asked. I've never heard of it. You wouldn't have. It was classified. Earth has had problems, wars, conflicts, threats that never made it to official records. The Ghost Division handled them. What kind of threats? Rogue artificial intelligence. Genetic experiments gone wrong. Terrorist groups with nuclear weapons. Civil wars. And things worse than that. Things humanity doesn't talk about anymore because we're ashamed of what we became. Kreloth was staring at him now, the anger replaced by something else. You're saying Earth has been hiding its military strength? Not hiding. Choosing not to use it. After humanity nearly destroyed itself in the resource wars, we made a decision. We would present ourselves to the galaxy as peaceful and weak. We would avoid conflict whenever possible. We would be diplomats, not warriors. But you're still warriors, Zelovara said softly. We're survivors, Jake corrected. We learned to fight dirty, to adapt, to do whatever it takes to live another day. Earth's history is written in blood. We climbed to the top of our food chain by being more vicious, more clever, and more determined than anything else on our planet. He pulled up his sleeve, showing the scars on his arm. I got these fighting a rogue AI network that tried to exterminate all organic life on Earth. These ones, he touched his chest, are from a bioweapon attack in the African Federation, and the ones on my back are from an orbital strike that killed everyone in my unit except me. Zelovara reached out, almost touching the scars, then pulled back. Why did you never tell me? Because I was ordered not to. Earth's government wanted to maintain the peaceful image. They sent me here to secure the alliance, nothing more. I was supposed to be a symbol, a diplomatic tool. I wasn't supposed to matter. But now the Void Swarm is 6 weeks away from destroying everything. Pretending to be weak won't save anyone anymore. Kreloth circled Jake slowly, reassessing him. If what you're saying is true, if Earth has this military knowledge, why keep it secret? Because we've seen what happens when humanity embraces war. We nearly ended ourselves. We wanted to be better. We wanted peace. Jake met the commander's eyes. But we never forgot how to fight. We just chose not to unless we had no other choice. And now? Zelovara asked. Now we have no choice. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Zelovara made her decision. I'm calling an emergency session of the full Coalition Council. You're going to present your ideas to everyone. If they reject them, at least we tried. But I think you're right, Jake. We need a new approach. They won't like it, Jake warned. Human warfare is brutal. It breaks rules. It uses psychology and fear as weapons. It targets the things other species consider off limits. Then we'll learn to be brutal, Zelovara said firmly, because survival matters more than honor. 2 days later, Jake stood before the Coalition Council. Representatives from 20 different species filled the chamber. Ambassador Lisa Grant sat in the human section, her face pale. She knew what was about to happen. She had tried to stop it, but Zelovara had overruled her. Jake activated a holographic display showing Earth's history, the wars, the conflicts, the near-extinction events, images of devastated cities, weapons that could crack planets, conflicts that killed billions. The council watched in horror. This is what humanity is, Jake said. This is what we've always been. We're not the peaceful explorers we pretended to be. We're killers who chose to stop killing, but the Void Swarm doesn't care about our choices. It only cares about consuming everything in its path. He showed tactical data, strategies that seemed insane to the other species. Suicide attacks, biological warfare, psychological operations, plans that violated a dozen coalition treaties. You're describing war crimes, one of the representatives said, disgusted. I'm describing survival, Jake replied. When you're facing extinction, honor doesn't matter. Only winning matters. The argument went on for hours. Half the council wanted to reject Jake's proposals outright. The other half was terrified enough to listen. Finally, Zilovara stood. I call for a vote. Do we give Jake Morrison authorization to implement a human-led defense strategy? Yes or no? The vote was close, but fear won out over pride. The authorization passed. Jake looked at Zilovara across the chamber. She nodded slightly. It was done. Humanity would stop hiding what it truly was. As the council dismissed, Commander Kreloth approached Jake. I still think you're a reckless fool, the commander said. But if you can stop the swarm, I'll follow your lead. Don't make me regret this. I'll do my best, Jake said. That night, Jake sent an encrypted message to Earth. It was one word. Activate. Within hours, human ships began emerging from hidden bases throughout Coalition space. Not exploration vessels, but warships designed for killing. The Ghost Division came out of retirement. Soldiers who had been living as civilians picked up their weapons again. Humanity had been sleeping, pretending to be harmless, but the sleep was over, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans did best. They survived. No matter the cost. The command center hummed with activity. Jake stood at the central display, studying the movements of the Void Swarm. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations. But the humans among them moved differently now. No more pretending to be soft diplomats. They wore combat uniforms marked with the Ghost Division insignia, a skull with stars for eyes. Zilovara entered the room and everyone stood. She waved them back to work and joined Jake at the display. Your ships have arrived, she said quietly. I counted 50 human warships. Where were you hiding them? In empty systems. Asteroid fields. Places no one bothered to look. Jake gestured to the display. The swarm will reach the Talvor system in 4 days. That's where we'll make our stand. Talvor is a mining colony. 2 million people, I know. We're evacuating them now. But we're leaving the infrastructure intact. The swarm will come for the resources, just like it always does. Commander Kreloth approached. Since the vote, the Vexari commander had been cooperating with Jake, though reluctantly. My fleet is ready. 40 ships, the best we have. What are your orders? Jake pulled up a tactical map. Your fleet will position here on the far side of the system. The swarm will think you're defending the colony. You'll engage them, make it look like a standard battle, then retreat. Retreat? Kreloth's face darkened. The Vexari do not retreat. You will this time. Because it's a trap. The swarm needs to think it's winning. It needs to commit everything it has to taking Talvor. And then we hurt it in ways it's never been hurt before. Over the next 3 days, Jake coordinated the largest military operation humanity had ever attempted. Human engineers worked with Vexari technicians to modify weapons and plant hidden surprises throughout the Talvor system. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Intelligence officers monitored the swarm's approach. Jake barely slept. He moved from station to station, checking every detail. Zilovara stayed with him, watching him transform from the quiet consort into something else entirely. This was the real Jake Morrison, the soldier who had fought wars across Earth and survived. You're different now, she said during a rare quiet moment. The way you move, the way you speak, even your face looks different. This is who I used to be, Jake said. I put it away for a long time. But some things you can't forget. Do you enjoy this? The planning, the combat? Jake was quiet for a moment. No, I hate it. But I'm good at it. And right now that's what matters. The Void Swarm arrived at Talvor exactly when Jake predicted. It came as a massive dark cloud. Millions of individual organisms moving as one. The thing was beautiful and horrible at the same time, like watching a hurricane in space. Kreloth's fleet engaged first. The battle looked conventional, standard coalition tactics. The Vexari ships fired their weapons, destroying hundreds of swarm creatures. But more kept coming. The swarm adapted quickly. changing its formation to minimize damage. Jake watched from the command center. Good, it's committing. More ships moving into the system. We're losing vessels. One of the tactical officers reported. Krelith is taking heavy casualties. Tell him to retreat, now. The Vexari fleet pulled back, breaking formation and running. To anyone watching, it looked like a rout. The swarm surged forward, smelling victory. Now, Jake said quietly. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel all around the system, but they didn't engage the swarm directly. Instead, they released thousands of small drones, each one carrying a specialized payload. What are those? Zalovara asked. EMPs. Electromagnetic pulse weapons? Old Earth technology. The swarm's organic bodies use bioelectric signals to coordinate. We're jamming those signals. The drones detonated in waves. The effect was immediate. The swarm's perfect coordination shattered. Individual creatures began behaving erratically, attacking each other, flying in random directions. Hit them now, Jake ordered. Human and Vexari ships opened fire together. But they weren't using standard weapons. Jake had modified everything, adding biological agents, radiation weapons, things designed specifically to hurt organic tissue. The swarm started dying in massive numbers, but it wasn't enough. The swarm was already adapting, rebuilding its coordination. Jake had known it would. Phase 2, he said. Release the virus. Virus? Zalovara stared at him. You created a bioweapon? Humanity has created many bioweapons. This one was designed for the swarm specifically. It attacks their cell structure, breaks down their ability to communicate with each other. That's barbaric. That's war. The virus spread through the swarm like wildfire. Creatures began dying faster than they could adapt. But the swarm had a defense. It started splitting into smaller groups, trying to isolate the infected portions. Jake had expected this too. Phase 3. Target the nexus points. Human intelligence had identified something important. The swarm wasn't truly mindless. There were larger organisms within it, nodes that coordinated the smaller creatures. Kill those, and entire sections of the swarm would become disorganized. Small teams of human soldiers in specialized armor flew directly into the swarm, using jetpacks and suicide tactics to reach the nexus creatures. It was insane, reckless, and it worked. The swarm began to fracture, but the cost was terrible. Jake watched the casualty reports come in. Ships destroyed. Teams that didn't make it back. Thousands of lives lost in hours. Pull back, he ordered. Let the virus finish the work. The combined fleet retreated, leaving the swarm to tear itself apart. It took 3 days, but eventually the swarm in the Talvor system died. Every last creature, the victory celebrations were muted. Everyone understood what they had just witnessed. Humanity had fought with a savagery that shocked the other species. They had used weapons and tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. But they had won. Jake stood alone in the command center, looking at the empty space where the swarm had been. His hands were shaking. He'd sent good people to their deaths, made decisions that would haunt him forever. Zalovara found him there. The council is calling it the miracle of Talvor. You're a hero. I'm a killer, Jake said quietly. I just killed more efficiently than the other side. She touched his shoulder gently. You saved millions of lives. Maybe billions. At the cost of thousands. Yes, that's what leadership means. Making impossible choices. Jake turned to face her. There were tears in his eyes, though he tried to hide them. On Earth, we have a saying. War is hell. People say it, but they don't really understand. They think it means war is difficult. But that's not it. Hell is the place where you lose your soul. That's what war does. It takes pieces of your soul until there's nothing left. Zalovara pulled him close, the first real embrace they'd shared. Then let me carry some of that weight. You don't have to do this alone. They stood together while the crew worked around them. Outside, the fleet was regrouping, preparing for the next battle. Because there would be another battle. The swarm at Talvor was just one tendril of a much larger entity. Commander Krelith approached with a status report. The main swarm has stopped advancing. It's hesitating. I've never seen it do that before. It's afraid, Jake said. We hurt it badly. It knows we're dangerous now. Good. Let it be afraid. But it won't stop. The swarm doesn't retreat. It will adapt, evolve, find new ways to attack. We bought ourselves time, nothing more. How much time? Weeks, maybe a month. Jake straightened up, wiping his eyes. We need to use that time to find the source. The main nexus. The heart of the swarm, and we need to kill it. Do you know where it is? No, but I know how to find it. Jake looked at the data streams flowing across the displays. The swarm leaves traces when it moves. Quantum signatures. We can track them back to the origin point. That could be thousands of light years away. Then we'd better start now. Over the following week, human scientists worked with coalition researchers to trace the swarm's path backward through space. The trail led them deeper into uncharted territory, past the edges of known space to a region that no one had explored. Jake assembled a strike force. 50 ships mixed human and coalition vessels, volunteers only. Everyone knew it might be a one-way trip. Zelovara insisted on coming. Jake argued against it, but she wouldn't back down. "You're my husband," she said firmly. "Where you go, I go. That's not negotiable." The night before they left, Jake and Zelovara stood on the observation deck of the lead ship. Earth was visible in the distance, a small blue dot among the stars. "Tell me about your home," Zelovara said. "Your real home before all the wars." So Jake told her. About growing up in New York City, about his family, about deciding to join the military to make a difference, about losing friends in the resource wars, about the moment he decided to become a diplomat instead of a soldier. "I thought I could leave the fighting behind," he said. "I thought I could be something better." "You are something better. You fight only when you must. That takes more strength than fighting all the time." "I hope you're right." They jumped to faster than light the next morning, heading into unknown space. The strike force flew in tight formation, ready for anything. 3 days later, they found it. The heart of the void swarm was beyond comprehension. It was a living planet, a massive organism that pulsed with dark energy. From this central mass, tendrils extended out through space, controlling the smaller swarm entities across the galaxy. Jake stared at it in awe and horror. "We can't fight that. It's too big." But even as he said it, his mind was working, looking for weaknesses, looking for a way to win. Because that's what humans did. They found a way, always. The living planet filled their view screens, pulsing with an evil light. Jake had seen many terrible things in his life, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. The void swarm wasn't just a mindless plague. It was ancient, purposeful, and impossibly vast. "Scans show it's been here for thousands of years," one of the science officers reported. "Maybe longer. It's been sending out those tendrils slowly, consuming everything it touches." "Why didn't the coalition detect it before?" Zelovara asked. "It's in a dead zone," Jake said, studying the readings. "No inhabited systems nearby. No reason for anyone to explore here. It's been growing in the dark all this time." Commander Kreloth's face appeared on the communication screen. His ship was positioned at the edge of the system. "We can't destroy something that large. Even if we used every weapon we have, it would barely scratch the surface." Jake was quiet, thinking. The others waited, watching him. Over the past weeks, they'd learned to trust his instincts. "We don't need to destroy it," Jake said finally. "We need to kill it." "There's a difference." "Explain," Zelovara said. Jake pointed to the pulsing core of the massive organism. "That's its brain, its heart, whatever you want to call it. The central consciousness that controls everything. The tendrils spreading across the galaxy are just extensions. Kill the core and the whole thing dies." "How do we reach the core?" "The outer layers would destroy any ship. We don't use ships. We use people." The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. A small team would fly directly at the planet using specialized armor, punch through the outer membrane, and plant a quantum disruptor at the core. The disruptor would tear the organism apart from the inside. "It's suicide," Kreloth said bluntly. "No one would survive." "Maybe not," Jake agreed. "That's why I'm asking for volunteers. No one has to do this." Every human on the strike force volunteered. So did half the coalition personnel. They had to turn people away. Jake selected a team of 12, including himself. Zelovara immediately tried to join them. "No," Jake said firmly. "You're the queen. Your people need you alive." "And I need you alive," she shot back. "I'm coming." They argued for an hour. Finally, Jake gave in. He knew that tone in her voice. She wouldn't back down. The team prepared their equipment. Each person wore powered armor capable of withstanding extreme conditions. They carried weapons, tools, and one quantum disruptor that would either save the galaxy or fail completely. Before they launched, Jake gathered everyone together. "I won't lie to you," he said. "Most of us probably won't make it back. This thing will fight to survive. It will try to kill us every step of the way, but if we succeed, we save trillions of lives. Every species in the galaxy. That's worth dying for. Sir, one of the younger soldiers spoke up. His name was Pete Harris, barely 20 years old. What if it doesn't work? Then we die trying. That's all anyone can ask. They launched an hour later, 12 armored figures flying toward a living planet that wanted to consume them. The swarm's defenses activated immediately. Massive tentacles reached out, trying to grab them. Smaller creatures swarmed around them. The team fought their way forward. Jake led from the front, using his weapons to clear a path. Zelovara flew beside him, her Vexari strength letting her tear through enemies that would have killed a normal human. They lost the first team member 5 minutes in. A tentacle caught Lieutenant Sarah Kim and crushed her armor before anyone could help. Jake watched her die on his tactical display and kept moving. Stopping would doom them all. The outer membrane was like flying through acid. It burned against their armor, eating through the protective layers. 2 more team members fell here, their suits breached. They died screaming. Jake wanted to stop, wanted to help them. But he couldn't. He could only move forward. Inside the organism, it was worse. They flew through tunnels of living tissue, fighting off immune responses that tried to destroy them like infections. The thing knew they were there now. It was fighting back with everything it had. Commander Kreloth's voice crackled over the radio from the ship above. Jake, the outer swarms are activating. They know you're attacking the core. You need to hurry. Working on it, Jake grunted, blasting through another wall of tissue. They lost 3 more people reaching the core chamber. Only 7 remained. Jake, Zelovara, Pete Harris, and 4 others. The core was massive, a pulsing brain-like structure that filled a chamber the size of a city. It was aware of them. Jake could feel it trying to get into his mind, whispering promises and threats. Plant the disruptor, Jake ordered. They worked quickly, attaching the device to the core structure. But the organism fought back. Tentacles erupted from the walls. One caught Pete Harris and pulled him away, slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack his armor. Jake saw the young soldier's terrified face through his helmet. Without thinking, Jake launched himself forward, grabbing Pete and cutting through the tentacle with his plasma blade. Stay with me, Jake said. But Pete's armor was breached. The atmosphere inside the organism was toxic. Pete coughed blood, his eyes going unfocused. Did we win? Pete asked. We're about to, Jake promised. Pete smiled and went still. Jake gently lowered the body and turned back to the disruptor. It was armed and ready. Zelovara was fighting off more tentacles, protecting the team while they worked. Everyone fall back, Jake ordered. Get to the ships. I'll trigger the disruptor. Jake, no, Zelovara said. We do this together. If I stay, I can make sure it works. If we all stay, we all die for nothing. Go, that's an order. I don't take orders from you, she said, but her voice was shaking. Jake pulled her close, their helmets touching. I need you to live. The galaxy needs you. Please, Zelovara. Go. She hesitated, then kissed him through the helmet. Come back to me, Jake Morrison. That's an order. Then she was gone, leading the others back through the tunnels. Jake was alone with the disruptor and the dying planet organism. He activated the timer. 30 seconds. Enough time for the others to escape, not enough for him. Jake sat down, his back against the core structure. He thought about Earth, about his family, about all the people he'd lost over the years. He thought about Zelovara and the future they might have had. 20 seconds. The organism's whispers got louder, more desperate. It knew it was dying. It offered him anything, everything, if he would just turn off the device. 10 seconds. Jake closed his eyes and thought about Pete Harris and Sarah Kim and all the others who had died getting here. Their sacrifice had to mean something. 5 seconds. I'm sorry, Jake whispered to everyone he'd ever failed. 0. The disruptor activated. Reality itself seemed to tear. Jake felt the organism's death scream in his mind, a sound beyond hearing. The core chamber collapsed around him. Above, in the ships, Zelovara watched the living planet convulse. The tendrils spreading across the galaxy went dark, dead. The swarm creatures everywhere stopped moving, their connection to the core severed. They had won, but Jake was still inside. Someone get down there, Zelovara ordered. Find him. My queen, the structure is collapsing. Nothing could survive. Find him. They searched for 3 days. The planet organism was dead, breaking apart into chunks of dead tissue, but there was no sign of Jake Morrison. Zalovara refused to give up. She led the search teams herself, flying through the debris in her armor, scanning every piece of wreckage. On the fourth day, they found him. He was barely alive, his armor nearly destroyed, floating in a pocket of dead tissue. Somehow, the collapsing structure had formed a shelter around him, one chance in a million. They pulled him out and rushed him to the medical bay. The doctors worked for hours. His injuries were extensive, burns and breaks and internal damage that should have killed him. But Jake Morrison had survived worse. He woke up a week later. Zalovara was sitting beside his bed holding his hand. She had barely left his side. "Did we win?" he asked, his voice rough. "We won," she said, tears streaming down her face. "The swarm is dead, all of it. You saved everyone. Pete, Sarah, the others? Gone. You're the only one who made it out of the core." Jake closed his eyes. Another burden to carry. More names to add to the list of people he'd lost. "I'm sorry," Zalovara said. "I know that's not enough. But I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's mine. I led them there. You gave them a choice. They chose to be heroes." Jake squeezed her hand. "What happens now? Now we rebuild. The coalition is safe. Humanity is being hailed as saviors. They want to give you medals, honors, everything. I don't want medals. I know, but you'll accept them anyway because that's what heroes do." Jake smiled weakly. "I'm not a hero, Zalovara. I'm just a soldier who got lucky. You're my husband, and I love you." Jake stared at her. "You love me? I've loved you for weeks. I just didn't realize it until I thought I'd lost you." She leaned forward. "Stay with me, Jake Morrison. Not as a political arrangement. Not as a strategy. Just as you and me. I'm not easy to live with," Jake warned. "I have nightmares. I carry too much guilt. I'm broken in ways that never heal. Then we'll be broken together." Jake pulled her down and kissed her properly for the first time. When they separated, both were crying and smiling. "Deal," Jake said. The recovery took months. Jake's body healed, but the emotional scars ran deep. He woke up screaming sometimes, dreaming of the people he'd lost. Zalovara was always there, holding him until the nightmares passed. Humanity's role in the galaxy changed completely. The pretense of weakness was over. Other species now knew what humans were capable of, for better and worse. Some were grateful. Others were afraid. Ambassador Lisa Grant worked overtime to manage the political fallout. Earth sent more representatives, more ships, more evidence of humanity's true capabilities. The coalition restructured, giving humanity a permanent seat on the council. Commander Kreloth became Jake's closest ally. The two warriors understood each other in ways others couldn't. They shared drinks and stories about battles they'd survived. "I misjudged you," Kreloth admitted one evening. "I thought humans were weak. I was a fool." "You thought what we wanted you to think," Jake said. "That was the point. Why hide your strength? Pride demands you show your power. Pride gets people killed. We learned that the hard way." A year after the battle, Jake and Zalovara stood on a balcony in the Imperial Palace, watching the three suns set. The galaxy was healing, trade routes reopened, colonies were rebuilt. Life continued. "Do you ever regret it?" Zalovara asked. "Coming here? Marrying me?" Jake thought about it. "No. This was where I needed to be, where I was meant to be. Even with everything that happened, especially with everything that happened. We saved trillions of lives, Zalovara. That has to count for something." She leaned against him. "We're talking about building a monument to honor those who died fighting the swarm. Pete Harris, Sarah Kim, all of them. Good, they deserve to be remembered." "So do you." Jake shook his head. "I'm just one person. They were heroes. So are you, whether you accept it or not." They stood together as darkness fell over the palace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve. But tonight they had peace. Jake thought about Earth, about the long journey that brought him here. He thought about the people he'd lost and the people he'd saved. He thought about the weight of command and the price of victory. But mostly, he thought about the woman beside him and the life they would build together. "I love you," he said quietly. "I love you too," Zalovara replied. And for the first time in years, Jake Morrison felt something close to peace. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Strength wasn't about showing off power. It wasn't about dominating others or winning every fight. True strength was choosing peace when you had the power to make war. It was protecting others even when it cost you everything. Humanity had been strong all along. They just chose to be kind first. But when kindness failed, when evil threatened everyone they loved, humanity knew exactly what to do. They survived. They fought, they won, and they never ever gave up.